It's 2 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down beside you because you promised yourself you wouldn't check it again. Your mind is racing through a conversation from 6 years ago that nobody else remembers. You feel broken. You feel like the only person on Earth still awake. But you're not broken. You're doing something humans have done for hundreds of thousands of years. You're just doing it without the part that used to make it bearable. Tonight, when you finally do fall asleep, you'll probably do it in one long, unbroken stretch. 8 hours, maybe 7, maybe 5 if you're unlucky. Lights off, door closed, silence expected. Anyone who wakes up in the middle of the night assumes something is wrong with them. But for almost all of human history, that single unbroken block of sleep wasn't the normal pattern. It was the exception. Historian A. Roger Ekirch spent over a decade digging through diaries, court records, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe. What he found surprised even him. Hundreds of documents, some dating back to the 1300s, casually referenced something called first sleep and second sleep. Not as a disorder, not as a complaint, as a normal expected part of the night. People went to bed shortly after dusk. They slept for 3 or 4 hours. Then they woke up, and they stayed awake, often for an hour or more, before drifting into a second sleep that carried them to dawn. What did they do during that waking hour? They prayed. They talked quietly with a spouse. They tended a dying fire. They thought. Some visited neighbors. Some had sex. Some simply lay in the dark and let their minds wander, undisturbed, unembarrassed, unmedicated. The watching hour, as some called it, wasn't a malfunction. It was scheduled. It was expected. It even had a name. Why would the human body split sleep into 2 pieces? Psychiatrist Thomas Wehr ran an experiment in the 1990s that gives us a clue. He took a group of modern adults and removed all artificial light from their evenings, restricting them to 14 hours of darkness a night, the way a winter night would have looked before electricity. Within weeks, their sleep changed. They stopped sleeping in one block. They split, almost exactly the way Ekirch's historical sources described, into 2 distinct phases with a quiet waking period in between. This wasn't something Wehr's subjects had been taught. Nobody told them to do it. Their bodies simply reverted on their own to a pattern that modern light had been suppressing the whole time. The implication is strange and a little unsettling. The 8-hour consolidated block of sleep you've been chasing your whole adult life, the one wellness articles insist you need, might not be the biological default. It might be the deviation. Electric light may have erased the pattern, not improved it. So why did it disappear? The candle is part of the answer, but the real shift came later, in the 19th century, with gas lighting and then electric bulbs. Suddenly, night stopped being a fixed, dark container that the body had to live inside. Night became negotiable. Factories ran shifts through it. Cities lit their streets against it. And gradually, the cultural expectation flipped. A full, unbroken night became a symbol of discipline, of a properly run household, of modern living. Waking in the night stopped being normal. It became evidence that something was wrong with you. Here's the part that should sit uncomfortably with you. The watching hour wasn't empty time. In a world without phones, without screens, without anything to scroll through in the dark, that hour became something close to involuntary reflection. People in Ekirch's sources describe using it to examine their dreams, to plan the day ahead, to quietly process grief or worry without an audience. It wasn't restful in the way sleep is restful, but it wasn't wasted either. It was a built-in space for the mind to do something it apparently needs to do. Sit with itself, undistracted, in the dark. Now compare that to what happens when you wake up at 2 a.m. today. Panic usually. A reflexive reach for the phone. A flood of light into a brain that was never built to process a screen at that hour. Anthropologist Carol Worthman, who has studied sleep across dozens of traditional societies, found something that reinforces this. In communities without electricity, nighttime waking is common and rarely distressing. People wake, shift position, murmur to a partner, and drift back off. There's no anxiety attached to it because there's no expectation that the night should be unbroken. The waking itself isn't the problem. Our reaction to it is. This raises an uncomfortable question. What if a huge percentage of what gets diagnosed today as a sleep disorder is actually a perfectly ordinary biological rhythm, colliding with a cultural expectation that was invented less than 2 centuries ago? Not every case, of course. Real sleep disorders exist and deserve real treatment. But for a meaningful number of people who wake at 3 a.m. and lie there spiraling with anxiety about the waking itself, the anxiety may be doing more damage than the waking ever could. There's a deeper layer here too, one that reaches further back than candlelit Europe. Before agriculture, before villages, before walls, your ancestors slept in small groups, often in the open or in shallow shelters, with predators and rival groups a real and constant possibility. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, including the Hadza of Tanzania, have observed something striking. At almost any point during the night, someone in the group is awake, not standing guard in any formal sense, just naturally, biologically awake, while others sleep around them. Researchers led by sleep scientist David Sampson tracked this directly, monitoring Hadza sleep patterns with wearable sensors over many nights. Their data showed that true, simultaneous deep sleep across an entire group was rare, almost statistically unlikely to occur for more than a few minutes at a stretch. Someone was always stirring, always partially alert. The group's sleep, taken together, functioned less like everyone shutting down at once and more like a relay, with overlapping shifts of vigilance running quietly underneath the rest. Think about what that means for your own brain. The part of you that startles awake at a small sound in your apartment, the part that feels a flicker of alertness in total silence for no obvious reason. That isn't a glitch left over from a more dangerous time. It may be exactly what it was built to do. It may be doing its job perfectly, just in a bedroom where there is, for once in 200,000 years, actually nothing to watch for. So what changed isn't your biology, it's the room around it. Your ancestors built fragmented, watchful sleep into their lives without resistance because nothing told them it was wrong. Fires needed checking, predators needed listening for, infants needed soothing in the dark. Waking up was not an interruption of the night, it was part of the night's design. Modern life removed almost all of those triggers, but it forgot to remove the architecture built to respond to them. And so when you wake up at 2 a.m. now, with no fire to check and no predator to listen for, that old architecture still activates. It still needs something to do. With nothing real to watch for, it turns inward instead, and finds your inbox, your relationships, your mistakes, your fears. The watching hour didn't disappear. It just lost its job. So it started watching you instead. Which brings us back to where you started tonight, lying in the dark, wide awake, feeling like something is wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with you. You are not failing at sleep. You're running a program written for a different world. One with fires to tend and threats to track, now running in a quiet apartment with nothing left for it to do. Maybe the answer isn't a new app, or a stronger blackout curtain, or another supplement promising 8 perfect hours. Maybe it's simply this. The next time you wake at 2 a.m., instead of panicking, instead of reaching for the glow of a screen, you let the old watching hour happen. You lie there. You let your mind do what it was built to do. And you trust, the way every human before electricity trusted, that the second sleep will come.